Aerial coverage of news events. We take it for granted today, but it wasn't long ago that helicopter news coverage was pretty much of a novelty, and the 1992 LA riot coverage was groundbreaking. We take a look back at the history and then talk to our own chopper expert about how aerial coverage has changed. The Melrose Trading Post, a little swap meet near West Hollywood, is celebrating its 25th anniversary. We take a look at how it's grown and become a model for schools to help support the arts. And Descanso Gardens is getting creative as well, as the lush greenery becomes a backdrop for an immersive art installation that you can wander through and experience with all of your senses. Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Hal Eisner. You know, we've been talking a lot about the 1992 riots here in Los Angeles. That was 30 years ago. And the whole idea of aerial video was so groundbreaking back then. But as you went over the 30 years that followed, it changed so much. Back then, in those days, many of the things that we saw from the air were because of helicopter video. Back then, visuals from far above the violence on the ground were startling. They were raw. And one of those helicopter journalists back in '92 was one of my colleagues.
We prepared the helicopter, totally fueled it up, got our camera equipment ready.
It was moments before the Rodney King police beating verdict was to be announced. Anticipating not guilty verdicts in the case, Hannah Zoe Tur recalls that preparation for covering news in the LA skies April 29, 1992 was not going to be like any other day.
I even had a still photographer, and I even brought my lawyer down to the airport to ride with us because I thought there'd be a riot, and I thought that the Los Angeles Police Department would illegally try banning us from the skies by using the Federal Aviation Administration to issue a temporary flight restriction, which I would have violated.
Tur, who was working for our sister station, KCOP Channel 13, was right. The LAPD officers charged in the case were all found not guilty, and demonstrators started filling the streets.
By late afternoon, people were throwing bricks at cars.
That was at the intersection of Florence and Normandy, and Tur was overhead.
We were able to convince the news director that I worked for to go ahead and get us on the air so we can warn people about what was happening at Florence and Normandy.
And there's no police presence down here.
Then came the infamous beating of truck driver Reginald Denny.
Within seconds, his door was ripped open. Mr. Denny was pulled from the vehicle and he was beaten. He was kicked.
A brick was thrown at his head. He had serious injuries. All that 30 years ago. News coverage from the sky with technology that did the job.
But today, light years ahead.
Tur, who now works in the Silicon Valley with some of the newest emerging news technologies, says everything about telling stories from the sky technologically has improved.
We're using some of the same technology they use on feature films.
Better, more stable cameras, sharper lenses, broadband, cell technology.
Some of the technology I'm seeing that is just fits, it can fit in your pocket, can broadcast 4K imagery.
But in the end, it's still all about the story, just better ways to tell it.
And you have no idea what's coming in the next 3 to 5 years with drone technology. That is a game changer.
As for what Tur witnessed 30 years ago, that's the kind of thing you never forget.
I remember the events of that day like it was yesterday. It just does not go away.
From 30 years ago until today, there have certainly been changes in covering news from the air. And at least for me, when I think of helicopter news coverage, I think of a voice you're all very familiar with here at Fox 11, the voice of Stu Mundel.
We're going to be coming up on the 405 freeway, 100 miles an hour, passing big rigs down there. Oh, no. Are you kidding me? Oh, my gosh. I hope that wasn't lunch. See it right there, the suspect trying to get into somebody's property or still trying to hide, but doing a very, very poor job of it right there. LAPD coming to a stop. Oh, come on, guys, he's right there. The officer's running right by him.
Just a few of the memorable moments brought to us by Stu Mondel. Boy, you have quite a personality out there. I got to tell you, Stu, glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Hal, and I love that compilation that you put together there. Those are probably my finest moments on broadcasting.
You
for
have
sure.
some
Thank you.
remarkable moments up there. I've got to tell you. You know, you're in SkyFox right now. We have a couple of helicopters actually. Tell us about that one.
Yes. Well, this one right here is the newest of the SkyFoxes. And I was listening to Zoe's interview earlier on, and they were talking about technology and how everybody's got basically a broadcast studio in their back pocket, with their cell phones. What's going on in the helicopter, the revolution has been amazing. And it is much like all technology. When I started in the 90s, it was so much more basic. And now it's all touch screen. There's the ability to zoom is phenomenal. And, in the old days, we used to make jokes that we could read somebody's watch on the ground. Now, today, we can almost really, truly do that. The other day, we could read tattoos on somebody's arms. So the zoom technology that just in the cameras and what the cameras can do is, basically tripled in just the past couple of years.
I'm kind of seeing a screen off to your right there. Can you just give us a little idea of what we're looking at there?
Well, this screen right here is what the operator sees, and we actually have a map that actually lays up over this screen right here. This is the actual map itself, but but we're inside the hangar, so the antennas are not relevant. They don't have the ability right now to hit the satellites. But basically, what you can do with this camera right now is we can actually put it on a house, get an exact address where, of that home, just by putting it on there. So we can get our ground crews there quicker, or actually aid the police department if and when we have to. But that technology was non-existent just in the 90s or early 2000s when I started in the business, because, we were using paper maps. We were using Thomas guides.
You've been doing this for since 2000? Is that right? So that's
2000.
8 years. That's
Right
8
on
years
2000.
after the riots. So you've really seen a lot of the change over the years. For one thing, watching you sit there as you are, people like you used to hang out of the helicopter with a belt wrapped around you, shooting video with a camera. You used to scare the dickens out of me all the time. But what are some of these changes you've seen since the year 2000?
Well, since 2000, like I said, the technology just to get the signal to the station, which, for the viewer is probably one of the things, the last thing they want to hear about. But that is one of the biggest pieces of technology, is to be able just to get that signal to the station. Nowadays, it really, truly is all touchscreen. You select the map, you select where you want it, and you just push a button and it happens. In the old days, you had to manually steer an antenna. Even right before I got there, they actually had a person steering the antenna, had it like on a pistol grip, and would steer it out the window.
And you know what, Stu? I got to stop
yeah.
you for 1 second, because we only have a minute left, and we're looking at pursuit video.
Oh, no.
Pursuits and fires and all kinds of incredible things you have to cover up there. Just talk about how today's technology makes it easier for us to really get those stories that you do.
It's all in the mapping. It's all in the scanners. We hear it, we type in an address, and we just go directly there. In the old days, we would have to actually find it on a map, figure out major intersections, talk in general terms. A fire you can see off in the distance, but sometimes if it's a shooting or something like that that's breaking, and we need to find an address. In the old days, we would fumble around trying to find it on the ground. Now you type in an address, and basically the camera will point at it till you get there. That's the kind of technology we have today.
And we just have a few seconds left. You take these stories, you embrace them, and you tell us these stories in such a fashion that they're gripping. Is there a story that you can recall, even just say in the last year, that just was remarkable? I know I have the same problem when people ask me about what story did I like the best, but what really tested your mettle?
You know what? The last really big one would have been that one where the firefighters were shot up in Agua Dulce, and we were watching that house burn, and they were unsure what was going on exactly. That was a very difficult one. That was information. There was a lot of speculation, and when the information started becoming more solid or concrete, it was really it was troubling to talk about. Firefighters shooting other firefighters. That one was very difficult. But of course, the excitement is always what it's all about. Pursuits are always, clearly, one of the stories that I prefer to cover, just because it is very fast moving, unpredictable, and then sometimes can be very dramatic, but also it is also very informative. And people seem to forget that we put this on television not as an entertainment, but as more for public safety, telling people what's going on and showing the public what is happening that they might not even think about, what law enforcement, first responders have to deal with. And then on that first responders note, it's the same thing with fires. We can see things, we show people things that they might never even see. Even first responders, they only cover certain areas, so they might have a big fire once a month. We might see a big fire one day a week. So it's one of those things where I enjoy informing the public, letting them understand where their tax money's going, what the first responders are doing, and how they do it and how they protect the public out here in the Los Angeles area.
And you do it so well. Stu Mundel, thanks for joining us. You stay safe. Keep doing that great job up there for us for Fox 11.
Thanks.
All right, coming up next on Fox 11 News in Depth. The Melrose Trading Post has been around for 25 years now, but do you know what it's all about? We'll tell you coming up next. Don't go away. Welcome back to Fox 11 News in Depth. I'm Hal Eisner. You may know that there's a flea market every week at Fairfax High School. You may even be aware that it's been going on for 25 years, but you may not know why shopping at the Melrose Trading Post is such a good deed. Joining us to talk about that are Pearson Blates and Whitney Weston, the founders of the Melrose Trading Post. Good to see you both. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. Listen, let me ask you, when you guys came up with this idea for the swap meet at Fairfax High School, you never expected it to be around this long, did you?
No, not at all.
How did
we were planning on doing it one time, and we've been doing it every Sunday for 25 years.
I happen to be a big fan of flea markets. So how did it all get started? Give us a little bit of the Post 101.
Well, we lived in the neighborhood. We were artists, and we wanted to get involved with the school, Fairfax High School. So we knocked on the door, and we asked them if we could do some art programming at the school. And what we found out is that what they needed was money. So they asked us if we would do some fundraising for them. So we thought of doing a flea market for one day and raise money. And it was so successful that we've been doing it every Sunday for 25 years.
And have raised over $10 million for the high school.
That's just remarkable. And that's really a big part of this, isn't it? That you're raising money for programming for kids, for the arts.
Yes, for the arts, for everything you can imagine on this campus. You can imagine $10 million over 25 years goes for a lot of different things. What's key is we're connected to the school. We find out right away what we need, what they need, and we make it happen.
You know, I bet other school districts kind of envy what's going on at Fairfax High School with your trading post. I suppose it's grown over the years, and I gather you have a foundation as well.
Yes.
Well, we actually are a nonprofit. So we've always been a nonprofit. So all of the money that's raised at the Trading Post, every single penny of it goes either to the school, to any programs for students or teachers, or the arts. We also do have a small theater where we do plays and spoken word poetry and other things for the community. So it's a community dollar all the way across.
Yeah, I know there's a big history for the meet itself, but I gather there's some entrepreneurs that got their feet wet there as well.
Yeah.
Oh, big time. You know, it's the perfect place to come and if you have a good idea, you set up in a 10 feet by 10 feet space and you give it a shot. And we have over 6,000 people every Sunday that come to the market, and it's a great place for people to try things out. And major companies have grown out of this market. And we have such an interesting, unique merchandise every Sunday.
You know, I've got to tell you, I just looked at that video. There was an old Victrola, that big thing with a kind of a cone, and you used to put a record on it. You used to crank it, and it used to play music. It was a long time before streaming music. And one time at a flea market, I bought myself an old early 1900s radio, a stand-up radio that had tubes in it. And I took it to the radio station I was working at, and I got the engineers to get those tubes to light up and to work. And it sounded like I was listening to old radio, but I was listening to new radio and an old radio. But that's what you find at flea markets. You find arts and crafts, but you find really neat, unique little things, don't you?
We had a guy who was putting in, finding those cases, Then they were setting up a Wi-Fi Bluetooth setup in the back of that old radio. So you could not only have the old sound, but you could connect it to your, to your phone.
Yeah, it's like a treasure hunt.
So tell us a little bit, and we only have about a minute left, the details of your 25th anniversary and the swap meet.
You want to go?
No, you go ahead.
So we're celebrating 25 years, but what we are celebrating is the fact that the community has come onto this campus and students get a chance to interact with the community. That's really our mission, is we bring the community and the students together. And that's what is so unique about our model, and that is what is so needed at public schools across the country, is how do we figure out how to not have those students isolated behind a chain link fence. Instead, that public school should be a crossroads, a community hub for students and community interacting. That's what schools used to be, and that's what we are now.
Well, tip of the hat to you both, Whitney Weston and Pearson Blades. It's a good thing to have a way for these kids to get funding, and flea markets happen to be something I find very entertaining, to be honest. Thank you both for being with us. And coming up next on Fox 11 News in Depth, you never know what's going to pop up in the springtime. Even a place as classic and well-known as Descanso Gardens might have a few surprises in store. We'll be back with that next. Descanso Gardens up in La Cañada, Flint Ridge is already one of the most beautiful spots in LA County. It's got 150 acres of forest and flowers, along with lush green lawns, man-made streams, picturesque ponds, and right now spring flowers are in bloom, and so is the art. Joining us is Jennifer Errico. Jennifer is the marketing manager over at Descanso Gardens. Boy, that's pretty picturesque language there I just spewed out, isn't it?
It was a perfect introduction for us.
You know, a lot of people may not have been to Descanso Gardens. It's hard to believe, but tell people what this place is.
So we're really an oasis. We're located just north of downtown Los Angeles. We have what we like to call our wild side, which is oak trees and California natives. And then we also have a curated side, which is a beautiful rose garden and our spring blooms. And right now we also happen to have art.
Now, having said that, you've got this art installation that we want to talk about. So this sounds so exciting. Tell me about this.
So the art installation is called Your Natural Garden. Artist Adam Schwirmer came in, and we actually been working on this for a few years because we got sidelined a little bit by the pandemic. And he took over not only our art gallery, but also the historic house, and then created some art in the garden. So it's really an immersive experience. It's a lot of fun, and we invite you to touch the art, explore the art, and really have a fun day.
Yeah, I was getting the impression here it's not a hands-off kind of art display, is it?
No, not at all. In fact, it's about every sense. So we have bells that ring. You can play in a room full of boas. There's weird chairs to sit in, and there's smells and sounds and all kinds of exciting, fun things.
When you talk about smells and sounds, give us an example. Let's start with smells, because like down there at California Adventure Park, they have this ride where you smell the orange groves, and is it that kind of thing?
Yes. So in what we call the uncomfy room, which is that pink room you see in the video, there's sometimes smells like very sweet smells and kind of smells that you may like or not like. But in the Zeppelin room, which is the room with the giant Zeppelin-looking mass, the walls have actually are from recycled materials, from wood that's been burned. So there's like a smoky kind of campfire smell in there.
And then sounds, we're talking about bells, we're talking about what?
Bells, everything you see in the video, you can touch, you can rap on, you can make, you can move the table, you can set it. You know, it's really an amazing time to ask people to come to the garden and just experience things. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I think people really are ready to come and have fun.
Is this sort of the ultimate in arts and crafts right here?
It is. And the artist is really interesting because he's very into recycled materials. So most of what you see, he went to a recycling plant in Irvine and just found materials. He actually found old bikes and ladders, cable, wood, and that's what the art is made out of.
Adam Schwerner, is that how you say it, Schwerner?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's kind of a provocative artist, huh?
Yes, it's not what you would expect in a garden. It's really kind of fun, and the colors aren't what you expect in the garden, but the reception's been amazing. People come and they just love it.
How does it integrate with the garden exactly?
So, a garden, what's a garden? We are an accredited museum. We're just really a museum of nature. So even, you think all the way back to gardens in France or the most public historical gardens, and they always included art. So we just brought art into the garden. Our gallery actually opened in 2011, so we have had traditional art exhibitions here. Now this is the largest kind of interactive thing we've ever done.
All right, so it's available for everybody to see. When I think of the sort of connection between art and nature, I'm thinking about that tree that we saw with all the pretty colors coming up there and sort of bringing art and nature together that way. Jennifer Errico, thanks so much for joining us. Descanso Gardens, they have a website. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Yes, you can find out everything you need at descansogardens.org.
All right, Jennifer, thanks so much. We'll be back with more Fox 11 News in Depth right after this. And finally, if you haven't already, please check out my podcast. It's called What the Hell, and it's available wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or just go to whatthehellpodcast.com and you can enjoy the audio of today's program. That's it for this week's Fox 11 News in Depth. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great week, everybody. Let's take another walk through that garden. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.